Welcome to Unite Now, where we bring Unity to you, wherever you are.
Welcome everyone to this retargeting and reusing animation. First of all, there's a chat, like a chat tab in the Zoom. You can tell us in the chat, how did you handle the walking animation of two different characters? This is our main question for today, so make sure you answer this question in the chat box. Well, Daniel Sanchez, I'm your co-instructor for today. I'm an indie developer. I have my own studio on Narwacon. It's really obvious that I'm not a native English speaker, so my apologies if I said something weird. I'm a Unity Certified Instructor, and we are here with Nicolas. I let introduce him.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicolas Borromeo. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, but currently living in London, working for a company called Product Madness as a Unity senior developer. Before this job, I was a Unity teacher for almost 8 years, working in different universities in Argentina, and I'm also a Unity Certified Instructor and developer. Well, I'm glad to share this session with you today.
For this session, two amazing moderators. Ethan is not here, so my apologies, he's in the slide. But we have James and we have Brian, so you can ask anything you need in the Q&A tab. They will share you the links. They will answer any question you have to follow through this session. Please make sure you drop all your questions in the Q&A tab. And that's it. Thank you so much. And we are starting the session now.
Well, first we are going to start seeing how to create animations inside Unity, directly simple animations for our objects, and see how to share the same animations with different objects. Then we are going to see how to integrate animations from humanoid characters made in outside programs like Maya or 3ds Studio Max. So, and we are going to see how to share animations between characters with different bone structure, what is called retargeting. So let's start first with the simplest one. And actually, before it starts, some ground rules. If you never attended one Unity session, remember that these sessions are going to be recorded, are actually being recorded, and they will be uploaded, so you can see them later. You have two options in the way you want to follow the session. One is just watching, just watch and enjoy. And the other one is doing the exercises. You will have certain moments where I encourage you to do some exercises. So suit yourself as you better, please. Then remember that there's two panels of communication. You have the Q&A panel. That's just for questions, not comment anything there, please. The comments or maybe the answers to other people's questions, please post them in the comments chat, in the chat panel, actually. So remember, be respectful and constructive. And we are going to use Unity 19.3 in this case. The project might work in other versions, but the session is intended to use this version. So you will notice that in the slides, you will be seeing an icon in the top right part. That icon can be red, green, or yellow. In this case, we are not going to use yellow, so you will see those two. Red means just watch. Please don't do the same as I do, because you will miss the steps. So just watch, enjoy yourself watching. And when you see this one, this is a moment for you to do exercises. You will see some assignments and some limit time, so you have that time to do those slides. So pay attention to those icons, like in this case, the next slide I'm going to show have this icon here, so just watch for now. So as I said before, we are going to split the session between these 5 sections. Introduction, we just did that. Preparing the project, where you will download and open the project files. Then we are going to create reusable animations with the Unity Animator tools. And then we are going to see how to import and share animations between different characters. And then a little wrap up. So how you can download the project. Remember, here, look at here. This icon is just watch. So these steps are steps that I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Unity bit.ly Unity retargeting to download this zip. I'm going to download and extract it, and you will find an entire Unity project there. So actually, I just skipped that part, and in my computer, I already downloaded the zip. You will see this zip in the URL. Remember, you will download that in a moment. Just watch for now. And after decompress it, you will find the following project inside. So no big deal, just a zip file with a Unity standard Unity project inside. No a Unity package, unlike other sessions. Then how to open it? The usual way. You will open Unity Hub, you will select the projects tab, you will click the add button, and you will look for the project folder I just showed you to open the project. So in my case, I have Unity Hub open, I have project select, I will go to add, Retargeting Animation, open, and you can see that the project now is inside your projects list. You can just click it, and Unity will automatically open. Those two steps is what I want you to do now. So remember, here is the green icon. It's your moment to do. So go to this URL, download the project, decompress it, and open it with the Unity Hub. You have 5 minutes, so let's start now.
Yeah, for those who are getting a warning message about the Unity version, you can upgrade it or downgrade it. It's just fine. Make sure you have the 19.3 version, so you don't have anything. And they are asking about if you need a special package for this session.
No. In this case, you won't need to install or download any extra package. All needed is already included in the project file.
If you have the 19.3 version, I guess you'll be fine. If there's any warning, anything like that, you can totally open the project as the previous slide. If you can share it with us, Nicolas. If there's people trying to drop all the project in the top. We'll have more sessions or just this one. This is a standalone session, but we have a lot of sessions in this month, so you can totally check on the live learn schedule.
So if you couldn't finish so far, download it, just keep doing it in the background. You will time later to continue that if you didn't finish it now. So we have prepared the project. Now it's time to create reusable animations. So this like some kind of metaphorical question, but what is an animation? Why we need animations? And in a sense, we are, as a game developers, we are animating objects constantly. Maybe when we create a script that move the player with the WASD keys, we actually animating the project, the character, moving it. So in this case, we are referring to animations to whatever animation or fixed animations we can do without scripting using Unity tools. And they can be used to make the scene feel more alive. Like in this video right now, you see there are lots of moving parts. Maybe they are not important in the gameplay of your game, but they are important to improve the appearance of your game. So you can create contextual animations about the player doing some action, or the player activating something, or some background animations and background animations about maybe some fire animating or some drum moving, just to improve the idea of your scene being alive, in a sense. Also, animations can be used in conjunction with timeline to create cutscenes, and that's pretty amazing. We are not going to see timeline here. We are just creating the animations. So how to create animations, how animations are created. Here in Unity and in almost every other software, animations are created through the animation, through the movement, or through changing values or properties of the objects. So you can animate the position of an object, like making the position change based in time, or the rotation, or the color, or whatever you want, actually. In Unity, you can actually make whatever property that the object has exposed. So how we can make the values change over time? Through keyframes. The keyframes are basically these little dots, in our case, that determines which value, which property has which value at which time. In this case, you can see that in this case, the green, well, it's occluded, but it's basically the position, the y-axis of the position of the player, or the whatever object we are animating. And you can see how the keyframes determines that in this moment, it's a value maybe 0.5. In this moment, in the half seconds after animation started, is in 2.5, and then reduced. So you can see how Unity will play this animation and will animate the values according to these curves or these actually keyframes. We are going to talk about curves in a moment. Just think about keyframes so far. So in Unity, we have the animation window. That is basically this the same one what we are seeing, where we can create these animations, we can create those keyframes and modify those curves. So how we can create animations? Remember again, this is just watch for now. You will have time to do. But I will go to create animations. Window, animation window. In this menu, you will find the animation window. You can then select an object to animate, and the same window will prompt you to a button to create your first animation. And then you can save the animation file wherever you want. Each animation you create is contained in its own animation asset. So let's do this. In this case, I'm going to open scene 1. In your case, you are going to do that later. Scene 1 is a simple example of 3 objects that we want to animate. I will create an animation on one of them and then apply the same animation to all of them. So let's start creating the animation, the empty animation actually. I will select the cube in this case. I will go to Window, Animation, or Command 6 in Mac. I think it's Control 6 in Windows. I will just dock this here because it's convenient. So while the object to animate is selected and the animation windows is opened, you can click this create button that will do a lot of things, but we will check every single thing later. For now, when you hit create, you are prompted to save the animation. In this case, I will be tidy and create a folder, animation folder, and put the rotate animation here. So I'm saving a rotate clip inside this folder. You can actually see that now if my folder has this rotate animation now. So first step, create animation clip, done. So next step, how to create keyframes. This is done basically putting the playback header in the exact moment you want to animate. In this case, I will put the playback header in second 0. The playback header is basically this line here. So clicking the record button, once we enable the record button, every change we set in the editor, like I go to the inspector and modify the color of the object or the position or the rotation, will be recorded in that moment. So if I have the playback header in the second 0, every change will be set as the values of the properties at second 0. Then I can, as an example, put the playback header in second 1, change the properties, and I have a set of values for second 1 and a set of values for second 0. Maybe the player can be in the 0, 0, 0 position at the second 0, and maybe the player can be in the, maybe the position 10, 10, 10 in the second 1. So I will see an animation that will last a second and will interpolate the position of the player between those frames. So let's test this. In my case, I will put the header in second 0 to determine the initial state of animation. I will click on record. And now I will set the initial rotation of the cube to 0. You will notice that the rotation is already 0. So even if I set again 0, nothing happens. You can see that nothing was recorded here. A little trick is just put whatever value you want and then reset 0. And you can see now that the property animated is tinted in red. And now an animation track was added with the rotation. You can even open it and see the values. So you can see how we added rotation as a property to animate. And in the second 0, it will have a 0, 0, 0 value. Now I will put the playback header in the second 1 to record the values that I want the object to have in the second 1. And in this case, I will set here 360. I want a full loop. So You can see second 0, no rotation, second 1, 360. And you can see that as I move the playback header, you can see the animation in action. You can actually hit play and see it in the exact speed it will be playing. So as you can see, we have created our fist animation. Maximize the window Unity, okay. That's basically the first steps. So now it's your time to do this. I want you to select an object, the cube. Actually, I want you to first open the scene one, then select an object, the cube or Adam or the car, whatever you want, and create an animation. But this animation needs to move the object, not rotate. Try to move it. Whatever movement you want. Specify 2 keyframes, 2 positions, and animate. If you have some extra time and you want to do that, just animate the color of the material also. So we will take 5 minutes. So we will start now. So Swapnil, I see your questions. How you add the keyframe? Tell me how to. Okay, you don't need any hotkey actually. You need just to click on the record button, and then just with the record button set and the keyframe, the playback header in the second you want it to record the values, just change it in the inspector, or actually here you can actually move it. See how I am moving, and the position was added automatically. Just in case, if you want to, you can also hit in add property and find for the exact value you want to animate. But just change it and the keyframe will be added automatically. Or if you want to, actually, you can use this add keyframe, but it will add more than necessary. Okay, guys. Again, if you didn't have enough time to finish, we'll have a time in a moment. But I think we get the main idea of animating. Don't try to make your animation too nice or too like exact, because it takes time. Just do whatever animation and test it, just to know the tools. So something that I'm not sure if what's the previous question, but I will answer what I intended, what I understood from that questions. But maybe you are noticing that the cube, in my case actually, when it's rotating, it just make like stops at the end and then resume, stop and then resume. It's like I want just a constant rotation. I don't want it to just stop. Why Unity behaves like this? Because Unity applies like a default formula when interpolating keyframes, and in this case you can see that the curve generated by the interpolator makes the velocity goes faster, then stops a little bit here, and then actually that's not my case. So I will show you my case. This is great. Look how the curves, when I switch to the curves mode, I can see the actual animation path. And you can see how the animation starts fast, keeps a velocity, and then stops the velocity, because it's simply interpolating using a sigmoid curve. But we can actually change it. We can actually change how Unity create this curve and maybe making it linear, making it more pronounced. You can do whatever you want. So we are going to change the way Unity interpolates. That is, again, setting the animation window to the curves mode, then selecting the property to modify in the left panel. In this case, rotation Y. You can see how when I click one, it's highlighted. And then select the keyframes to adapt the knobs. You will see that when I select a keyframe, in this case, this one, you can see that I have these knobs that allows me to change the shape of the formula. A little trick, it's not maybe the cleanest way, but one way to do this is selecting the knob and dragging it directly to the other one, so it points directly to it. And I can do the same with the other knob. You can see you can change both sides of the curve, so they like both look directly one to each other, and keeping the flexibility to change it later if you want. So you can see how the animation is just is more linear in this case. Another solution to making our curve linear will be, instead of modifying the knobs, I can drag and select both keyframes, right-click, and both tangents. Those knobs here are called tangents. So both tangents linear, And you can see that now we don't have any tangent, any knob there. It's just a linear interpolation between the two of those. So use whatever version you want, you like the most. I think the other questions that was answered before, asked before, was why your animation stopped. Maybe it's because if you select the animation, you have this loop time checkbox here. That in newer Unity versions is checked by default, but I think in other versions don't. So when you select the animation clip and check loop time, now the animations will loop actually. So actually, if I hit play, remove this. If I hit play, the animation will be linear and will loop thanks to the loop time checkbox. So that's basically how you can fix the animations. Now, it's time to reapply the same animation to other objects. But first, we need to answer another question: how the current object is applying the animation. So if you select the cube, you will notice that aside from the regular components of every cube, transform, mesh filter, mesh renderer, and box collider, there is another one called Animator. The Animator is the actual component that is playback in the animation. How the Animator playback the animation? Through what is called an Animator controller. An Animator controller is an asset that contains all the animations an object can play, but it's not its only its only function, but it also serves for the artist to determine the way the animations will change when, the player jumps. If there jumps, we need to change the animation, or when the player is falling, or when the player is shooting. So this is a step where artists can set the transitions and the conditions for those transitions to execute. We are not going to see transitions right now, but it's important to understand this because we need this controller to apply this same animation to the other objects. So when I created the animation with the create button in the animation window, automatically Unity not only create the animation, but create this asset that it's an animation controller. It's created automatically. If you want to create by your own, you can use the plus button. And here you have Animator controller. So this asset is set as the controller of the cube. Here, you can see that this one, when I click here, is highlights this. So basically, the animator is playing whatever animation the animation controller created by the animation window, too many animations, have set. So if you double click the animation controller, you will see that another editor is opened. This editor is called Animator, no animation, don't confuse them. Animator is to edit animator controllers. Animation is to create animations that the animator controller will execute. So you can see that the animator controller has inside the animation we created with the animation window. So basically, if you have maybe 5, 6 animations, you have one asset per each animation, like this rotate, but only one controller containing all of those. So if cube have 6 animations, in our case have one, but if it has 6 animations, you can just tell the animator controller of an object, hey, play back the animations specified in this cube. So simple scenario, one controller, one animation. Our cube has that one. So if we want another object to play the same animations, it's easy. We can select Adam, in our case. Adam already comes with an animator, so we can just drag the same controller, not the animation, don't confuse the animation controller, and set it to Adam. And our sports car doesn't come with an animator controller. I will add animator and set the cube. Now you hit play, and everyone is spinning and happy. So you can see how simple it is to create an animation and apply it to several objects. So, okay. So what I want you to do, basically, I want to first change a little bit your movement curves, just a little bit to see how the animation of the movement of the object changes. Select a not animated object, another one, the ones that you haven't animated, and add the same controller. Basically, do the same as I did. Add the animation to other objects. Remember that you did a movement, not a rotation. That's why I left this message here. You will you will find an error. And maybe some of you already detected that error, but maybe you not. So try it. Try apply the same movement animation to several objects and see what happens. And the error that will happen, I want you to guess what it is. And don't spoil the answer yet in the chat. Leave it for later. So 5 minutes to discover that. And let's start. Usually, it's better to just use the Animator controller and avoid creating animation logic in scripting because it's easier for artists to edit Animator controller. You can actually, if you want something super specific, you can actually add scripting to the Animator controller, like certain animation when it's playing can have a certain script executing what is called state machine behaviors. So I will recommend to you to stick to the Animator controller or add scripting to the animations to achieve super specific behavior. And remember that you will also need scripts to change the parameters of the Animator controller so the transitions can execute. But the short answer is yes, stick to animation controller. Okay, so as most of you probably have detected, all the objects like teleport themselves to the same position and animate the exact same position. And why they didn't keep their own positions? Because maybe you are thinking, okay, the animation is animating the world space coordinates. Actually, no, the animation is animating the local coordinates. But as your objects doesn't have a parent, Adam, the car and the cube don't have a parent, or in a way shares the same parent, the scene itself, they will just animate their positions to whatever position you say. So a way to solve that is through using parents. You remember that the animation is relative to the parent. So if each object has its own parent with its own position, they will maintain the relative positions to the parents. And the parents being positioned differently, the animation will play in different places. So in this case, I will change my animation. I will remove this one and making actually I will keep rotation. I will do rotation and movement. So remember that first you need to create an empty object, put the cube inside or the object you want to animate, and in my case, I will set the local position to 0, 0, 0. So the cube is in the same position as the empty game object. And you can see that it is in other place. Actually, a little trick is maybe you want this object to already spawn in the same position to the cube to avoid this kind of movement, constant movement. A little trick is to double-click the cube to focus it. So now the next object you create will be in the same position. So double-click the cube to focus it, create an empty object, and now the empty object is located in the same position of the cube. So now when I drag the cube inside the empty object, it's already at 0, 0 distance of its parent. And if I move the parent, of course, the cube will be moved. So I will set the cube. I will set the initial position again to 0, 0, 0. I will put another one, 0, 0, 0. And in the second one, I will say, okay, you go to 1. So you can see how it rotates and goes up. And pay attention that Adam don't have a parent, so the animation won't work. So again, I will double-click Adam, empty game object, put Adam inside, and that's all. Adam, it's already using the same animation, so we don't need to do anything else. The same for the car, empty, the object inside. And now each one animates its local position relative to its parent from 0 to 1, except Adam that has root motion and he is moving, so I needed to disable root motion. If you notice that your player is moving, it's because, especially in humanoid characters, they have root motion that basically the animation moves the actual object. I don't want that, so in this case, I will just disable root motion on the tree. So well, that's how you will deal with custom animations. Now, as they are asking in the Q&A, humanoids, let's deep dive on those. To animate characters, you can, in a way, animate vertex by vertex by vertex by vertex if you want to. That actually is a way to animate, but that's not the performant way to do that. So how we animate characters? In other programs, not inside Unity, you can do that. You can't do animations of humanoid 3D characters. Actually, in 2D, yes, but let's keep that for later. So in another program, 3D Studio, Maya, Blender, you can create what is called a rig. A rig is basically a set of bones, these like invisible objects, but they are there, that will determine the skeleton of the object. And then through a process called skinning, each vertex of the model is associated with different bones. So when I move one bone, the vertexes that are associated with a bone will move. And actually, this bone have an structure in a way that is, as an example, if I move the forehand, the entire hand will move. Or if I move the hips, all the upper part will be moved because they have like a parent-child relationship. So this is easy to do. In this case, you remember you cannot do this inside Unity, so you need to get an FBX file with the character, with animations, with skinning, with everything done, ready. In my case, you have some of them already in the project. I will open up Scene2 to see them. And in my case, you will, in your folder, actually, you will find in the characters, you have characters folder, you have 2 FBXs, Adam, and this dancer parasite, another character there. Those have everything you need. So the idea is to get an FBX file, create an instance of the character, like dragging in the scene, and let's see how it's configured by default. So I will take Adam. Yes, Adam. I will take Adam, will drag it in the scene, and I will set it again to the 000 position. And you can see that first, Adam already comes with an animator. We see that before. And you can see that in all the children of Adam, we have this BIP1 object that has several options inside. Those are actually the bones. You can see by their names: pelvis, thigh, spine. If I as an example, take a spine, I can drag it, and you can see how I'm moving the spine bone and all the bones associated with that one. I can go maybe to the second spine or the neck, and you can see in the neck that I can move the head. Something fun, you can actually move the bones and do stuff like that, or scale and do this funny stuff. But well, you are not animating those already. Our objects already have animations. But it's just for you to see how the bones are already rigged. So how we animate? Basically, the way we animate, it's the same. Remember, in this case, the animation is done in outside programs, but in those programs, you will need to do the same. Basically, set the position of the rotation, actually, of the bones at different moments to interpolate between poses. So basically, the animation is moving the bones, and through skinning, the actual mesh is being deformed to stretch along the bones. So in this case, you can have an FBX character, an FBX file character with animations, or you might have an FBX file with just animations, without characters. An FBX file can contain the mesh and the animation, or one or the other. You can have an FBX with no mesh whatsoever, but just animations. So in my case, actually, Adam don't have any animation. The one that have animation is the dancer parasite, so I will just drag that one in the scene. So the same, it has hips, it has spine, it has all the bones we expect. And if you select the FBX and go to Animation tab, in this case I will select the FBX and go to Animation tab, you will notice this clips list. This clips list has all the clips that are included. In this case, we have just one clip, and you can hit play here and see how he nicely dances. So here, if you want, you can create more clips that ranges from different parts. Usually, if it's a possibility, but maybe one animation file can contain several animations that you need to split in. So you can create clips with the plus button and then say, okay, this animation range from here to here, these animations from here to here, and cut the long clip in several clips. In our case, our animation file or character has just one animation, so we are going to stick with that. And even if you open up the FBX, you will find here the animation. called mixamo.com because that's the place where I get the animation. You can see that this is called exactly as the clip here. So if you change this to, I don't know, dance and apply, you can see that now, or not. Let me see, it should have changed. Maybe some reimportation. Okay, it's not changing, but you get the idea. So we have our animation. It's already integrated. We don't need to do anything, but just in case, here is where you can create and see it. How we apply the animation to our guy? The same. We need an animator controller. The animator controller needs to have this animation, and we need to apply the controller to the guy. So in this case, you can see that because we didn't create animation with the animation window, we basically need to create manually the animation controller. How? Right-click on Assets, create animator controller. I will color dancer. Double-click the controller to see the animations. As you can see, no animations because we just created it empty. How we add the animation? Simple. Go to the model. In this case, it was dancer parasite. Open the FBX file and locate the animation. Drag the animation to the controller, and that's all. We added the animation. So now we can select our dancer parasite, and in the controller, we can drag the controller we just did, this one. So we create a controller, we drag the animation, and we say to our character to apply that animation. So now you hit play, and our guy is dancing happily in the world. You will notice, and that's the interesting part here, that this guy, this parasite we have here, if we compare the rigging, the animation, the bones actually of Adam and the dancer parasite, you will notice that they don't have the exact same bones. Look how this guy have hips, we have pelvis. Yeah, that maybe as another name for hips. So far we are fine. We open spine, and here we have the first difference. The dancer parasite have one spine, another spine, and then it has different stuff. In this case, Adam is more complicated because it has a more complicated animation, has like cables and stuff that are actually connected. And you can see that the original spine, the same spine as this guy is here, so we can open it. But you can see that again, you have another bone structure. So basically, what I'm pointing out here is that they have different structure on bones. And the problem is that the animations of the dancer parasite won't be compatible by default with the Adams because of this difference. You know, if I say move that bone and the bone is not present in the object, the animation won't be applied on Adam. So that's a problem because you usually have different characters, maybe ones that your artist created, maybe ones that you downloaded from that store for convenience, maybe you download animations from other sources that pretends to animate other kind of structures. So it's basically a mess. How we can guarantee that two objects have the same rig, the same bone structure? And actually you can't. And that's why Unity created retargeting. Retargeting is the process of create like what is called an avatar. An avatar is basically like a standard structure of bones. Unity will see your bone structure and will see, okay, this is supposed to be the hips, or this the spines, this the chest. You need to have like a definition of what are the standard bones that every humanoid character has. Automatically maps, if possible, sometimes you need to map manually, but usually automatically maps your structure of bones with this standard. And you can take all your characters and or animations or whatever bones you have and say, use humanoid, use humanoid, use humanoid, use humanoid. When you set the read mode to humanoid, Unity will automatically do this mapping. And because we have a mapping to a standard, a standard set of bones, now those set of bones are compatible. If the animation bones are mapped to a standard, the same standard that our character has been mapped, now they are compatible. So you can use your character with mocap animations or whatever animation you want, more or less seamlessly. Sometimes you need to tweak some things. But so let me remember. Yes. Okay. So how we can do this? Okay. You can see that we have dancer parasite with its own animation with animate controller. I want to see how if actually the same animation applies to Adam. So I will add the same controller I use in Parasite to Adam, so both are supposed to play the same animation. And when I hit play, you will see that Adam is not animating because we see before, because Adam has other bones. So I will select Adam. Actually, yeah, both works. I will say Adam, go to the rig tab and say, hey, you are a humanoid. Generic is an animation type. Think to anything non-humanoid, any creature, maybe a spider or a horse. Unity cannot create a standard for non-humanoid characters. But for humanoid, you save it to humanoid, you apply, and here you have the Adam avatar. But this is an avatar, not a generic avatar, a humanoid avatar with this mapping. Actually, you can go to configure. I will say it before. And if you configure, you can see that here you can see the mappings. So the hips, it's mapped to this bone, the spine to this bone, and this bone. As you see, it's mostly automatic. So that's just to see it. If you want, you can go to configure and see it, but it's not necessary. The important part is that select all your animations and characters and set them to animation. I will do that the same with our dancer parasite. We'll set humanoid to also this one. And remember, this character has also animation, so we have set also animation to humanoid. And now both guys dance happily in the life. So that's basically the idea. Import animations, apply it with animation controller, and in case the two characters have different bone structures and they are humanoid, set the animation type to humanoid. So now I will leave you the rest of the session for you. I want you to drag Adam and the dancer parasite to the scene, create the animator controller and drag, remember this animator controller, which you can create in plus animator controller, and add the animation of the parasite, this one here, this one with the triangle, to the controller, and then use the controller on both characters, the dancer parasite and Adam. And finally, remember to set the animation type to humanoid. Subnil, after this exercise, we are not going to see anything else. So if you want to go, there's no problem. But we have 4 or 5 minutes left if you want to still doing the exercise. Daniel is asking where he can find the rig avatar tab. You need to select the FBX file of the character. You will find them in the models characters folder. In our case, we have the Adam FBX file and the dancer parasite FBX file. So you can select the original model, not the object, not the instance in the scene, not the game object, but the original FBX file, the asset. And here in Inspector, you can find the rig tab.
Previously, we had a question about the animation and the rigid body, like how the animation and the rigid body works together. Some overrides the other, and how we can overcome that problem when we animate something in this position and it's not applied to the rigid body functionality.
The animation can apply animation, but what's the idea? Sorry, the physics, but what's the idea? We don't want physics to fight the animation, actually. So that depends on your scenario. Let's say you have a character with a capsule collider with a rigid body that just falls, and the rigid body does stuff with the capsule collider. But you want maybe the character to run forward and hit some boxes. And you want the hitting of the boxes to be like consistent with the placement of the hands. Maybe you want to play a kick animation and the kick needs to push something. In that case, maybe there's another way, but I suggest you to do the movement of the character with rigid body and character controller or whatever you are doing, unless you are using root motion, but I will leave that out of the question for now. And if you add colliders to the bones, and each collider have its own rigid body, but set to is kinematic, the rigid body will affect the physics object. So if the animation moves the box that has a kinematic checkbox and a rigid body, that box will hit with the wall, and if the wall have rigid body, the wall will move or whatever you want. So it's a little complicated setup, but basically the trick is that one. If you are using root motion, it's actually the same. The bones will have box colliders with rigid bodies, but the trick is doing is kinematic. Why I say to do is kinematic? Because if not, the animation will move the bone, but the physics will make it fall because of gravity or whatever. When you set a rigid body to kinematic, the object won't have physics applied, but the object that have physics will be affected to it. So that cube will be, the kinematic cube will move according to the animation, and when it hits a physics object, the physics object will move. I think that's the scenario he was referring to. About David's questions, where the dense animation is. You need to, I will show you the assets folder. You need to go to models, characters, not animations, characters, dancer parasite. Here you find our dancer parasite. This is the FBX file. You can open dancer parasite. And in our case, it's already set up. You don't need to create the animation because it's here. You can see how if you open dancer parasite, dance is right there. So this is the clip. How you create the controller. You can go to plus, Animator controller, and create a new asset. In this case, it's dancer. You can double click it to open it and drag the dance animation inside the controller. This way you create a controller with just one animation, but you can apply it to Adam. In this case, I pick Adam. In the Animator controller of Adam, I drag the controller. So animation into controller, controller into game object. The animation is inside the FBX file, and the controller you need to create it in the plus Animator controller. About Hinks, animation is inside Dancer Parasite. Yes, I mean, there's a way to extract it, but that's not a good idea. Why? Because the idea is that this FBX file can be modified by the artist, and you can override a new version, this version with a new version. And if you do that, your extracted animation won't be updated. So it's preferable to keep this inside here, and when the FBX file is updated, your animation is animated because every game object, every controller is referencing this one. Sorry, David. In your case, it's probably called mixamo.com, not dance. The animation clip inside the object. In the case of David, it's not say dance. Remember that mine same dance because I go to the animation and change the name. But probably yours said mixamo.com. That's the animation. Whatever asset inside the FBX that has that triangle is an animation. About Anonymous answer, he has a biped detected but cannot be configured properly because of an unsupported hierarchy. This is because Adam has lots and lots of extra bones. I actually have the same error, but it still works. What it's saying is basically that we more or less matched the bones we thought that might be the ones we look, but we are not sure. That's some easy way to see the answer. In this case, it works, so we don't worry. But if any case, if you see that error, your character not animate properly, you can go to configure, and in the inspector, you need to manually check the associations. In this case, each bone is associated. Remember that the ones with the dashes are optional, but the non-dash ones are necessary, so you will need to drag manually. Basically saying that the automatic mapper didn't work, and you need to do it manually.
I just want to remember everyone that this session is being recorded, so you have the link in the chat. There's 4 more questions. Most of them are about control the animation with the translate, with the position. I well, I'm commenting my case. I work most of the time in 2D. I usually like to have the translation of the object separately from the animation because I need to do a lot of physics reactions, a lot of interactive ways to communicate with rigid bodies and other colliders. So I really like to have those separately. But there's I don't know if Nicolas, you can show us what's the next step for this session. If people follow through this session,
No,
the,
we are just over. So
oh
basically,
yeah. But what's
what to
the
do
next step? Yeah, if the people follow through this session, what's the next step they can find, they can search for?
Okay, of course, now that you more or less learn the basics of applying animations, I will suggest you to learn more about the Animator controller. Of course, you will have lots of tutorials in the learn.unity3d.com or .unity.com, actually, learn.unity.com, or in the Unity documentation, you can find several information about the Animator controller. Why? Because I suggest you to create Animator controllers with several animations, like, I don't know, maybe idle and work, create a transition between the two of them, and then through scripting, make the animator controller to switch between those animations. So basically, the idea is that you can create animated characters with this. In another way, another like possible way for you to continue this is through the investigation of timeline, a feature that allows you to coordinate several animations and create a cutscene. So you can animate a camera, you can animate an object, you can animate another object, and you can play the animations in a sequence that creates a full cutscene. And actually, if you want to animate the camera, you have sessions on Cinemachine and Timeline. There are actually sessions about those two. So that depends on your profile. You want to create cutscenes and you're an artist, I will recommend you to go and investigate Timeline and Cinemachine. If you are a programmer and want to animate characters, I recommend you to investigate more about the animator controller and scripts that control the controller, like, I don't know, maybe when you hit space, toggle on the jumping property of the animator controller, so the transition between idle and jump executes. That's maybe my recommendation. Okay, I will suggest to just close the session for the ones who want to go, but we will be there here for a few minutes after the closing for the ones who have questions. So a little wrap up. Remember to join the Learn Live Connect group. You will have valuable information and you will have a way to chat with other ones that assisted to this session. You can answer questions there. We will be there to answer them. Ask questions there. We will be there to answer them. And try to learn together. Especially in this situation, it's better to be together, and what better to learn sharing with other guys. Remember to also post queries and discuss there. And if you created an animation or if you created something that you really like, you can go to bit.ly/animation submissions to submit your project and say, hey, look, the amazing animation, and we are eager to see your creations.
Remember the link is in the chat, so we really encourage you to do so because it's a really nice like proof you work in something in this session, and it will give us like a lot of feedback for this session. So if you want to reach us, this is our profiles. For Nicolas is his mail and his LinkedIn. So if you want to be in touch with him, please do. If you want to reach me, I'm Daniel Sanchez. There's my mail. And if you speak Spanish, I really encourage you to follow me on Twitch. I'll be streaming about Unity in general and game development. And my Twitter is because people prefer Twitter. So that's it. Thank you so much for everyone who just need to go. It's pretty fine. Thank you for all moderators and for attending this session. So don't forget to join us on the Connect group, Learn Live Connect group. There's the link in the slide. So thank you, everyone. We'll be, yeah, I think we'll answer the three last questions and we'll finish the session. So thank you, everyone.
I will take Ivan's questions. What is the skin weight parameter that is currently on the screen? What happens if you change it from the standard for bones? I mean, that's a setting you are mentioning. It won't change the weight of the bones. It will just limit the amount of bones that affects the vertex, just for performance reasons. Actually, more than 2 or 3 bones affecting the same vertex, unless you have something really complicated, won't be necessary. But basically, the weight of the bones are not going to be changed, but some bones are going to be ignored. Actually, that's the behavior. Okay, Ivan, about your question about moving. You can control the speed of the animation through scripting in several ways. One way is to select the animation, or first actually select the animator controller, go to the parameters to create a parameter. Usually you create parameters to create transitions between animations, but actually we are going to use them for other purpose. We're going to go to play, float, with a speed parameter. This parameter will be set later via scripting, so it can adapt to whatever your script is actually moving. And then you can create, you select the animation, go here to where says speed, check this that says parameter, and you can see that in this case, this base speed will be multiplied by your speed. So if you set speed by 3, it's going to be 3 times faster, or 2 times faster. So this is a way to control this specific animation, because because I select animation. Each animation clip, if you have several clips, each one have its own speed control. That's actually something decidable. Of course, you can apply the same parameter to 2 animations. You can see that this animation and this animation both are being affected by the speed parameter. Select the controller, go to the parameters, create a parameter with the plus button, speed, select the animation, go to the inspector, check this parameter in multiplier, and basically this way you enable that whatever value speed has will affect or be multiplied by this one value. You can control this with scripting. You can get a reference to the animator and call to the set float function, passing speed as the first parameter and the speed, the actual value of the speed, like 2, 3, 4, whatever value you want, to the second parameter. Sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't sharing. Now, about Ivan's question. Yes, yes, you have already made that question. How you do that? Easy. You need to create 2 layers. With what I mean with layers, basically the same animation controller have 2 animation states. Two state machines in a way. So you can create all the logic for maybe the upper part of the body with the animations for the upper part of the body in the base layer, even if they move the feet, don't worry about that. And you can set the logic for the feet in the other layer. And you can create this avatar mask and say, okay, this avatar mask will mask out the feet and everything below the hips. This is basically a way to filter which bones and specific layer will modify. So in this case, I created a mask just for the upper part of the body, and assuming that our state machine is affecting the base layer, is affecting the top part, you can go to this wheel and select the avatar mask of the upper body. I will actually rename it as upper. And as you can imagine, you can create a second one with just the feet and apply it to the second layer. So you can control with one layer, one state machine, the upper body, and with another state machine, the lower body. Remember when you do that to increase the weight of the second layer, because weight 0 means no animation. In the animator, there's a set of functions you need to know. Set IK, if I remember, and set IK hint, set IK position to set the position, set IK rotation to set the rotation of both hands and both feet. So you can say, I don't know, set IK position of right hand to X position. And then you need to do set IK position weight to 1 to say, okay, I want the hand to fully be in the position I specified in the previous function call, set IK position. Because you can set a weight of 0.5 and it will look for a middle point between your target position and the actual position animation is setting. Basically, that way will interpolate the position of the hand between the position animation is saying and the IK position you specify. So you can animate the weight somehow to make the movement of your hand to interpolate between the actual animation and the target animation. Maybe, I don't know, a football goalkeeper just moving their hands towards the position of the ball. You can set the position of the IK to the ball, but the weight you need to set it slowly from 0 to 1 to prevent the hands to pop directly in the position of the ball. And you will also find the IK hints that are basically the elbows underneath the position.
Last question for you, Anne.
No, as far as I know, you can't use the animation window in runtime to record the position of character. Probably there's some package in the asset store, or there's probably a simple way to do it via scripting, but basically the answer is no. As far as I know, no.
Well, yeah. Other thing you can do is to write an extension from the editor to save those keyframes in the animation window. I'm not an expert, but you can totally do that and save that in play mode. And that's it.
Well, thank you guys, and see you next time.